Companies in other sectors simply can't say the same. I believe our discussion today needs to be based on facts. And here are some of them. Our wireless network reaches 99% of the population, but only covers 12% of our landmass. We're investing in satellite to mobile technology to connect every corner of our country. Our internet footprint reaches 60% of households today. We're investing to reach every household. In the last decade alone, Rogers has invested over $40 billion in our networks. To put this into context, that's more than the federal government's $39 billion in announced funding commitments for Canada's national housing strategy. Just last year, that included investing over $1 billion just to manage the huge increase in wireless data usage. Every year, we reinvest 90% of our profits back into Canada. That's investment in Canadian infrastructure, Canadian jobs, and the Canadian economy. We're making these record investments while inflation drives our cost of raw materials and labor up. On top of that, the federal government imposes more costs on wireless carriers than many other countries. We paid 7 times as much as US carriers for 3,500 megahertz spectrum. For low band 5G spectrum, we paid over 50% more. Annual spectrum fees in Canada are some of the highest in the world. They're up 15% in 3 years. Despite all of this, we're lowering prices for Canadians. The federal government's own data from Statistic Canada shows wireless prices are down nearly 50% over the last 5 years. In the last year alone, they're down 16%. Rogers has been the leader in driving this trend. We've cut the cost of data on our most popular 5G plan by over 70%. We led the industry and dropped our 5G entry price by over 40% to $50. We introduced a national Connected for Success wireless program with a free 5G smartphone and a $25 5G plan for over 2.5 million eligible low-income Canadians. We're offering 50 gigs for $34 on our Fido brand, all in the last year since coming together with Shaw. Customers are getting more for less, both in absolute terms and on a per gig basis. There are few industries today where you see record investments and consumers are receiving more, often at a lower cost. This is the outcome of rigorous competition. Last year, there were about 3,000 price plans in market. 4.9 million Canadians switched providers. What does this mean? It means that there's choice, more choice. The same can't be said about the UK or the US. The Wireless Consumer Price Index in the UK is up 24% over the past 5 years. In the US, it's up 1.5%. Wireless prices are higher in the US than in Canada. I'm looking forward to our discussion today, but I want to make sure that we're grounded in the facts. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll turn it over to MP Williams for 5 minutes, 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And we're here today because Canadians, although we're hearing some different stats today, they're telling us different stats. They're telling us that they're paying still some of the highest cell phone prices in the world. After 8 years under this Liberal government, we've had the cost of almost everything go up, and that's been already mentioned by our witnesses. When we look at grocery prices, we looked at just at the Toronto Daily Food Bank, there was 300,000 people visiting that food bank, bank fees, and cell phones. And cell phones are not a luxury anymore. Cell phones are essential. When we look at some of the facts, as cars are being stolen up 300% in Toronto alone, people use cell phones now to put Apple AirTags in their cars to track where their cars are going. They have doorbell cams where they're looking to make sure there isn't home invasions. People are using them to find coupons to go to the grocery store. Cell phones aren't a luxury, they're essential. And what happens when Canadians use more and more cell phones? They're using more data. When we look at the facts, Canadians need an average, by 2026, they're going to need about 50 gigabytes a month just to use the essentials on their cell phone. And we're not even talking about social media, and others. So when we look at other countries, and we do compare prices to the other countries, we do, and we have found there's more competition in the US, there's more competition in Australia. And what happens is that prices have gone down. We heard from the other day, Mr. Staferi, from Mr. Hartling, that the prices in Rogers were lower than that of the US and that of Australia. Do you stand by that statement at this point?
Thank you for the question, member of the committee. It's important we be clear on the facts. And the facts are twofold. One, prices are coming down in Canada by the government's own measure, Stats Canada. As I said in my opening comments, it's down 16% in the last
Sorry,
year.
only so many limited time here. I asked you a direct question. Are prices in Canada lower than the US and Australia, as Mr. Hartling stated the other day? Yes or no?
When you look at our price plans here in Canada, they are lower. Undeniably, that's what the facts say relative to the US. I encourage you to look at information that Rogers submitted to this committee.
And Mr. Staferi, thank you so much. I'm going to compare some prices. We had Fido, and Fido is owned by Rogers. It's your lowest price plan. We look for Canadians struggling to survive. They're looking at the lowest price for the most amount of data. And we look at Fido, which is about $34 a month. We compare that to the Americans. They have Mint Mobile, and the Australians have a great one called Moose. They're both lower than that price, but more importantly, I think that Canadians need to know, they both offer a 5G plan. When we talk about Canada, I know Rogers, TELUS, and Bell all talk about the fact that we have 5G almost everywhere across Canada. We're one of the most built-up networks, but Fido's only offered on 4G. So when we look at comparisons, I think if we had competition in Canada, Mint Mobile in the US, lower prices on 5G networks. We have Australia, several MVNOs on 5G networks at lower prices. Why is Fido, in your mind, do we have enough competition? And if we had competition, would Fido be in 5G?
This country has very robust and healthy competition. Consumers have choice. If you're to look at last year alone, 4.9 million Canadians switched their provider. If you're to look at Rogers itself, 20% of our customers switched plans. There is choice for Canadians, and there's very robust competition in the marketplace. As you look to our prices relative to the US, you use the example of Fido at $34. We have other plans on our Chatter brand that's as low as $19. And when you look at our price points relative to having the best networks in the world, certainly the value for money ranks at or near the top and definitely higher than the U.S.
Well, Mr. Staferi, I've just listed some competitors in the U.S. or Australia who all offer those price points at 5G. You're offering that at 4G. And we look at comparators across the U.S. or Australia, 3G is being even outdated. It's being taken off the networks in the U.S. because there's more competition. To go back to why we're here, you said you were going to increase your prices by $9. I'd like to go to both Bell and TELUS. Are you going to follow suit and increase your prices up to $9 for cell phone plans?
Who was that directed to?
To both of you, sir, Mr. Bibick and Mr. Entwistle.
Look, our focus, well, I'll start first, I guess. Our focus is on lowering prices for Canadians and delivering the very best services to as many Canadians as possible. I followed very closely your exchange with Mr. Staferi, and just to compare price, Virgin is a Bell brand, Virgin Plus. We offer it on the 5G brand, and our prices are undeniably lower than
Thank you, sir, and I appreciate that. I asked you a direct question, though. Are you going to be increasing your prices following Rogers and increase those prices by up to $9, yes or no?
Thank you very much for the question. Our focus is on lowering prices, and that's why our 50 gig plan, which is the one you referred to in your exchange with Mr. Staferi, is available at $34 on the Virgin Plus brand, which is on a 5G network, lower than in the US, UK, Australia, and France.
Thank you, Thank you. That did not answer my question. Mr. Entwistle, could you answer that question, yes or no? Are you going to be increasing prices up to $9 a month?
You're on mute, Mr. Entwistle.
We've done over 400 price changes over the last 12 months. 90% of those price changes were price decreases. Only 10% were price increases. Number two, I'm not going to talk about price setting in a forum with my two competitors sitting right here. And to answer your question directly, I'm highly confident that the average price per gigabit is going to decline prospectively for the benefit of Canadians.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sorbara. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair, and welcome, gentlemen, to virtually to this panel and to our committee. The first thing I wanted just to say is obviously to each of the CEOs, you know, many of the comments we've heard on the competitive dynamics within the Canadian wireless market or the Canadian telecommunications market here within the room have met with some skepticism, maybe a few chuckles. So I do want to get that on the record. You know, and we can debate about the competitive dynamics and how they've evolved in the Canadian wireless market over the last 20 or 30 years. I remember sitting was a research analyst for many years, covered many of your companies and understand the dynamics well. But my first question will be to Rogers, the announcement of the price hike, whether it's $7 or $9 or $10 or whichever number you want to have. The timing, obviously, in an affordability pinch or an affordability crisis that many Canadians feeling, would you not admit that the timing was not great? And if I could use the two-word term, tone deaf to customers and to the Canadian populace, that it was not probably the right thing to announce at this time for whatever reason? To Mr. Staferi. Mr. Staferi, you're still on mute, sir.
Thank you. I was muted by the host. Hopefully you can hear me now. We made price plan amendments in January of this year. Those changes were to a small percentage of our customer base. The average was $5, and most of those customers was $4 or less. I should reiterate, it was a small percentage of our total base. But the other item to note that's of importance is these are customers who are on legacy plans that were out of contract. And so it was important to us to make sure that these customers had choice. And so the customers could go online with 2 clicks. They could get onto a plan that was in market and give them the best value for money for their circumstance, or they could call in and we could work with those customers. That was really the important part for us. Having said that, that's against a backdrop of price plans that are in market that continue to come down month over month and year over year. I mentioned earlier that on average, 3,000 price plans and promotions were in market last year. That's more than 250 per month. And we see quite a number, over 20%, in fact, of our customer base continually looking at trying to get the best value for money. Our competitive environment drives us to put plans and offers out there that are going to earn the business of Canadians.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Staferi, for those comments. And going over to Mr. Babak, if I pronounce that, to Mirko, over at Bell. You know, I could have done this for each of the entities. I just chose Bell this morning, and I pulled up your 20F and your annual information form and was looking at some of the numbers on the mobile division. And, you know, you enjoy a 40% EBITDA margin, plus all of you folks enjoy a healthy margin on your EBITDA with regards to your wireless businesses. And yes, there's been some churn movement on Bell specifically. I haven't looked at Rogers and TELUS this morning, but I'm assuming that the same directional. And your ARPU measurement, as we would call it, average revenue per user, is continuing to increase. And I'm assuming that's about the data plans that people are using. They're moving up the value change, which is a little more expensive. If you folks are so adamant that prices have come down, why is there so much skepticism in the marketplace that they have not? Is it you're not communicating properly? Is it that the statistical facts aren't correct? But why is there so much healthy skepticism out there? And I'll start with the presidency over BCE and then over to Mr. Entwistle of TELUS, please.
Thank you for that question. It's an excellent question because, I mean, it's conversations like this which are really important so that